This podcast contains discussions of violent and disturbing content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is strongly advised. The views and opinions expressed are for informational and entertainment purposes only and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast's creators, hosts, or affiliated parties. If you or someone you know is in need of support, please reach out to a qualified mental health professional. This episode is brought to you by listeners like you, the last spark of hope in a world running low on signal. You're the boost behind this mic in these static-filled times. Stay tuned and stay human. On this episode of the podcast, they ask him to retrieve Dr. Hivat, right? And so I try to figure out where is Dr. Hivat. Him go to one scientist who has been known to par with Dr. Hivat. I work with him basically. Dr. Hivat and thing, and whatever. And him say, well, Dr. Hivat, they in the white room. Man said the white room. Answers just moments away.
Prepare for warp speed as we embark on a voyage through the vast expanse of science fiction in movies and television series. From distant planets to alien civilizations, we delve into the heart of the unknown, unraveling the tales that have captivated audiences for generations. Get ready to unlock the secrets of the universe on Code Flix.
Greetings, fellow sci-fi and fantasy lovers. Welcome to Code Flix, where we explore the TV shows and movies that shape our imaginations. I'm Andre Bonner, and in today's episode, we'll be discovering outbreak, isolation, and the edge of humanity in the Helix series, Season 1. Some shows hit differently, depending on when you watch them. And this one feels eerily ahead of its time. Looking back at it now, especially after living through the COVID-19 pandemic, I can honestly say the themes hit harder than ever. Rewatching certain episodes, you can feel the message pulsing through the story, the fear of the unknown, the breakdown of trust, and the desperation to survive. The setup is chilling. A mysterious outbreak erupts in a remote international research facility buried deep in the Arctic. What begins as a scientific investigation quickly spirals into a fight for survival as a team of scientists find themselves trapped in isolation with a disease that defies explanation. It's claustrophobic, it's intense, and it makes you question what you would do when every choice feels like a matter of life or death.
Helix is an American science fiction horror drama television series that aired on Sci-Fi from January 10, 2014 to April 10, 2015. The series follows a team of scientists from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, who travel to a research facility in the Arctic to investigate a potential outbreak of disease. While there, they find themselves stuck in a life-or-death situation that could decide the future of mankind. The executive producers of Helix were Ronald D. Moore, Linda Obst, Stephen Maeda, and Cameron Persanda, with Maeda serving as day-to-day showrunner. On April 29, 2015, Sci-Fi announced that the show was cancelled after 2 seasons. Researchers from the CDC, led by Dr. Alan Farragut and Dr. Sarah Jordan, investigate a viral outbreak at an Arctic bioresearch station, only to discover that it has disastrous and wider implications for the entire world. Prescribed genetic engineering research is being done by the Ilaria Corporation, the company running the research station, most interested in preventing exposure of their activities, rather than simply resolving the outbreak. Attempts at quarantine result in mutiny and attempted escape, and communication with the outside is mysteriously cut off. It is unclear at first whether the goal is to develop a bioweapon or to transform humans in some way. It is discovered that there are 2 variants of the virus. The first, Narvik A, is fatal with no cure. Those infected with the second virus, Narvik B, become dangerous, violent, zombie-like vectors, spreading the infection to others, with a small percentage eventually regaining some normality if treated, as it seems several characters have already been infected and cured. Those cured seem to have the ability to control the infected. The outbreak is revealed to have been a cover story to recruit Julia Walker as an unwitting test subject by deceiving the CDC personnel into creating an antiviral cure to benefit the Ilaria Corporation's objectives. After becoming infected, Julia is cured by the station director, Hiroshi Hitaki, who reveals he is her father, quasi-immortal and over 500 years old, as indicated by his bright silver eyes. He had created the vector virus as a means to activate dormant genes within Julia to give her a similar variation of immortality. Ilaria, which is run by a similar group of immortals, wants the virus in order to exert control over the world. Ilaria's chief operating officer, Constance Sutton, arrives with a mercenary army, and despite a protracted resistance effort by the CDC and base personnel, butchers most of the staff before abducting Julia. A cliffhanger, set almost 8 months after the pilot episode, on day 235, shows Alan meeting with his brother Peter somewhere in France, following a massive outbreak of the virus, to plan a border crossing. Alan is apparently oblivious to the fact that his brother is actively working with Ilaria and that Julia is an active member of Ilaria's immortal board of directors. Here's a detailed list of key tropes found in Helix, Season 1, 2014, with examples drawn directly from its episodes and arcs. 1. Isolation horror. The entire season takes place in the Arctic Biosystems Research Facility, completely cut off from the outside world, evoking claustrophobia, mistrust, and paranoia. Example: the CDC team arrives and immediately loses all communication. 2. Pandemic thriller. A deadly, rapidly spreading virus, Narvik, infects the scientists, mixing epidemiology and bio-horror. Episode: Pilot, Patient Zero infects the lab. 3. Body horror. Infected victims mutate grotesquely, black ooze, distended veins, and extreme aggression. Seen in 274, when infected subjects lose all sense of humanity. 4. Corporate conspiracy. The Ilaria Corporation funds the lab and conceals the true purpose of the experiments. Dr. Hitaki's loyalty and secret ties to Ilaria are slowly revealed. 5. Mad scientist. Dr. Hiroshi Hitaki embodies the archetype, brilliant, secretive, and morally flexible. His genetic experiments blur the line between progress and monstrosity. 6. Epidemic-induced madness. The virus causes both physical mutation and psychological deterioration, blending sci-fi and horror. Infected subjects hallucinate or become homicidal. 7. Mistrust among teammates. The CDC team fractures under suspicion and fear. Alan, Sarah, and Julia all question each other's motives. 8. Secret lineage. Julia discovers that Hitaki is her father, one of the show's central twists. Episode, Black Rain. 9. Immortal Conspiracy. The Immortals, led by Ilaria executives, are genetically engineered beings manipulating humanity's evolution. Introduced late in Season 1, expanded in Season 2. 10. Evil Corporation. Ilaria's reach extends globally, controlling research, containment, and even governments. The CDC team is unknowingly part of a corporate cover-up. 11. Fractured Team. The team divides over moral and emotional lines. Alan versus Hitaki, Sarah's loyalty, Julia's infection. Each character hides a secret agenda. 12. Body count escalation. The facility's population dwindles rapidly as the infection spreads. Every episode features deaths or transformations among staff. 13. Lethal Cure. The cure for the virus becomes as dangerous as the virus itself, a recurring paradox in medical thrillers. The serum gives Julia immunity but mutates her physiology. 14. Snowbound Horror. The remote Arctic environment isolates characters physically and psychologically. The blinding white setting contrasts with the black infection fluid. 15. Ethical Dissonance. The scientists debate morality versus survival, questioning how far to go in pursuit of a cure. Alan condemns Hitaki's methods, despite their results. 16. Shadowy Overseers. Ilaria's executives watch from afar, manipulating events without direct interference. Seen in encrypted communications and remote directives. 17. Unreliable Reality. Julia's hallucinations and time distortion create uncertainty about what's real. Especially in the later episodes, where her infection changes her perception. 18. Cold War Echoes. The secret experiments, bioweapons, and paranoia evoke Cold War-era scientific ethics. Hints of militarization and global manipulation by shadow powers. 19. Science Gone Wrong. What begins as a noble pursuit of medical advancement spirals into an apocalyptic scenario. The Narvik strain is the product of human ambition unchecked. 20. Cliffhanger Ending. Julia wakes up in a futuristic Ilaria-controlled city, revealing a global immortal conspiracy. Sets the stage for Season 2's expanded mythology. Puzzle piece summary of Season 1's thematic arc. Helix Season 1 starts as a pandemic investigation but evolves into a bioethical thriller about control, evolution, and immortality. It blends sci-fi procedural structure, CDC investigation, with psychological horror, corporate secrecy, and genetic mythology, ending in full-blown transhuman conspiracy. Here's a detailed breakdown of the themes and symbols in Helix, Season 1, 2014, along with a conclusion that synthesizes them. Themes. 1. Science, ethics, and the boundaries of knowledge. At the heart of Helix is the moral tension between scientific discovery and ethical restraint. The Arctic Biosystems Research Facility embodies humanity's thirst for advancement, specifically in genetic engineering and disease control, but also the arrogance of believing science can control nature. The series challenges viewers to consider where curiosity becomes recklessness. 2. Isolation and psychological breakdown. The remote Arctic setting intensifies a sense of claustrophobia and paranoia. As infection spreads, so does distrust, illustrating how physical isolation leads to psychological unraveling. The theme suggests that isolation can amplify both brilliance and madness. 3. Corruption of humanity through science. The Narvik virus represents the corruption of the human condition, transforming people into violent, inhuman versions of themselves. This parallels how ambition and moral decay can infect organizations like Ilaria Corporation, symbolizing a larger commentary on the dangers of corporate control over scientific innovation. 4. Control versus chaos. Throughout the season, characters struggle to impose order, scientific, ethical, and emotional, on an environment that constantly defies it. The outbreak acts as a metaphor for how control is an illusion when confronted with forces beyond human comprehension or moral limits. 5. Immortality and the fear of death. The series gradually unveils a deeper plot surrounding the quest for immortality. This theme examines humanity's obsession with conquering death and the moral compromises made to achieve it, raising questions about whether eternal life is worth the cost of humanity itself. 6. Trust and betrayal. Nearly every relationship in the series, scientist to colleague, sibling to sibling, is tested by hidden agendas and conflicting loyalties. The breakdown of trust mirrors the collapse of moral order within the lab, reinforcing how secrets can be as deadly as viruses. Symbols. 1. The Arctic Research Base. The base is a physical and thematic crucible, a sterile environment meant to contain knowledge but instead becoming a breeding ground for chaos. It symbolizes the fragility of human control when isolated from ethical grounding. 2. The Narvik virus. Beyond being a biological threat, the virus symbolizes moral infection, how power, secrecy, and ambition spread like contagion. It is both literal disease and allegory for corruption. 3. White, sterility versus black, contamination. The color palette, white sterile labs against blackened, infected areas, visualizes the collapse of purity and order. The stark contrast represents the duality between scientific purity and human corruption. 4. The Ilaria Corporation logo and branding. Corporate insignia and omnipresent technology symbolize the faceless nature of power, how institutions, not individuals, often perpetuate moral decay while claiming to serve progress. 5. Frozen environment. The Arctic cold serves as both barrier and preserver, suspending life, knowledge, and danger. Symbolically, it reflects emotional detachment, moral paralysis, and the frozen conscience of those who justify inhumane science. Conclusion. Helix, Season 1 uses the trappings of a sci-fi outbreak thriller to probe deeper philosophical questions about humanity's relationship to science, morality, and mortality. Through its sterile laboratories, frozen landscapes, and viral metaphors, it reveals that the real infection isn't biological, it's ethical. The pursuit of control and immortality becomes indistinguishable from self-destruction, leaving the viewer to question whether progress without conscience is evolution or extinction. Here's a character analysis of the main cast from Helix Season 1, 2014, a gripping science fiction thriller blending bioterror, isolation, and moral ambiguity. Dr. Alan Farragut, Billy Campbell. Role, CDC team leader sent to contain the outbreak. Traits, rational, determined, deeply moral, often torn between duty and personal emotion. Arc, initially arrives to save his brother, Peter, but becomes entangled in the ethical and emotional chaos of the outbreak. His strong moral compass erodes as the series progresses, revealing his darker side under extreme pressure. Relationships. Julia Walker, ex-wife, their unresolved tension complicates mission focus. Peter Farragut, brother, infected and untrustworthy, representing betrayal and guilt. Dr. Sarah Jordan, subordinate and lover, caught between admiration and disillusionment. Themes: the cost of duty, morality versus survival, the futility of control in chaos. Dr. Julia Walker, Kyra Zagorski. Role: virologist and Alan's ex-wife. Traits: intelligent, analytical, emotionally guarded yet deeply empathetic. Arc: infected with the Narvik virus early on, Julia's transformation becomes central to the show's mythology. She becomes immortal. Her struggle embodies the tension between human vulnerability and godlike evolution. Relationships. Alan Farragut, complex love/hate dynamic, she both trusts and resents him. Dr. Hitaki, becomes her pseudo-father figure, reveals shocking personal ties. Themes: identity and transformation, the fear of transcendence, humanity in the face of immortality. Dr. Peter Farragut, Neil Napier. Role: Alan's brother and the initial infected host, Vector. Traits: charismatic, ambitious, but emotionally volatile. Arc: moves from victim to antagonist. His infection amplifies jealousy and resentment toward Alan, turning him into both literal and metaphorical contagion. His eventual partial recovery exposes his inner conflict between brotherly love and primal drive. Themes: corruption of the human spirit, sibling rivalry, disease as metaphor for guilt. Dr. Sarah Jordan, Jordan Hayes. Role: young CDC researcher under Alan's supervision. Traits: intelligent, loyal, idealistic, vulnerable beneath professionalism. Arc: her unrequited affection for Alan complicates her judgment. Later revealed to suffer from a terminal illness, her exposure to the virus and its side effects lead to questions about mortality and evolution. Themes: the fragility of youth and idealism, love under crisis, the thin line between cure and curse. Dr. Hiroshi Hitaki, Hiroyuki Sanada. Role: Director of Arctic Biosystems, secretly part of the immortal Ilaria Corporation. Traits: stoic, brilliant, manipulative, deeply conflicted. Arc: appears villainous but is later revealed to have emotional depth, especially regarding Julia. His obsession with saving humanity through immortality hides a deep paternal sorrow. Relationships. Julia Walker, revealed to be his daughter, reframing his cold demeanor as tragic protectiveness. Alan Farragut, mutual distrust that evolves into uneasy respect. Themes: the burden of godhood, paternal guilt, science without ethics. Major Sergio Ballesteros, Mark Ganem. Role: military liaison working for the U.S. Army, and covertly for Ilaria. Traits: pragmatic, secretive, morally ambiguous. Arc: begins as a company man enforcing hidden agendas, but his conscience awakens through his connection with Inanna. He becomes a figure of reluctant redemption. Themes: loyalty versus morality, redemption through truth, the price of obedience. Inanna, Luciana Caro. Role: Inuit woman searching for her missing brother. Traits: brave, compassionate, grounded, a moral anchor outside the facility's corruption. Arc: exposes the human cost of Ilaria's experiments. Represents the voice of indigenous wisdom and natural order against scientific hubris. Themes: nature versus science, truth versus institutional lies, familial loyalty. Daniel Arav/Mixa, Miigwен Fairbrother. Role: Hitaki's adopted son, loyal to him but unaware of his true past. Traits: loyal, disciplined, dutiful. Arc: his discovery of his true identity, that Hitaki kidnapped him from Inanna's village, forces him to confront loyalty versus truth. Themes: manipulation, identity theft, awakening through pain. Dr. Doreen Boyle, Catherine Lemieux. Role: veterinarian and virologist, part of the CDC team. Traits: sardonic, outspoken, highly competent. Arc: acts as comic relief early on, but her death is a turning point, a reminder of the real stakes and the moral emptiness of Ilaria's experiments. Themes: the expendability of integrity in systems of power, human cost of science. Ice Cube Core Character Dynamics. Alan Left Right Arrow Julia. Science and emotion collide. Love versus infection. Past versus evolution. Alan Left Right Arrow Hitaki. Human ethics versus immortal pragmatism. Peter Left Right Arrow Alan. Brotherhood poisoned by guilt and viral rage. Hitaki Left Right Arrow Julia. Familial revelation reframes loyalty and betrayal. Sarah Left Right Arrow Alan. Youthful devotion meeting seasoned disillusionment. Brain Season 1 Thematic Threads. Science without morality leads to both discovery and dehumanization. Isolation breeds madness, mistrust, and evolution. Immortality both salvation and curse. Family blood ties fractured by ambition and lies. Control versus chaos, the central philosophical tension. No one truly controls the outbreak or their own nature. Production and Design Overview of Helix, Season 1, 2014. Helix is a science fiction horror series created by Cameron Persanda and produced by Ronald D. Moore, known for Battlestar Galactica. The series premiered on Sci-Fi in 2014 and is set in an isolated Arctic research facility where scientists confront a mysterious viral outbreak. The first season is notable for its contained, claustrophobic production design, merging medical realism with chilling futurism. Clapperboard 1. Production Overview. Created by Cameron Persanda. Executive Producers, Ronald D. Moore, Stephen Maeda, Linda Obst, and Cameron Persanda. Production Companies, Sony Pictures Television and Linda Obst Productions. Filming Location, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Sound stages, shot primarily at MELS Studios, with some exterior Arctic scenes filmed in snowy Quebec forests. Visual tone, the show maintained a sterile, isolated, and increasingly surreal tone, reinforcing both scientific control and viral chaos. Building Construction 2. Set and Environmental Design. Arctic Biosystems Facility. The main set, a multi-level, high-tech research base, was constructed almost entirely indoors. Design philosophy, the production team designed it as a closed system, every corridor a lab, and living space interconnected, mimicking an actual Arctic outpost. Visual aesthetic. Clean, clinical lines with steel, glass, and reflective surfaces. Color palette dominated by white, metallic gray, and icy blue to emphasize sterility. Overhead lighting and narrow hallways intensified the claustrophobic atmosphere. Laboratories and containment units, filled with authentic-looking biohazard equipment, sealed glass rooms, and airlock chambers. Props included real scientific instruments, centrifuges, microscopes, containment suits to achieve realism. Sublevel and ventilation system. The lower levels, where the infected are isolated, were designed darker and more deteriorated, with flickering lights, condensation, and visible decay. The contrast between the pristine upper labs and grimy sublevels visually represented the collapse of containment. Exterior Arctic environment. Arctic exteriors were filmed in snow-covered regions of Quebec and enhanced with digital matte paintings for blizzards and wide establishing shots. Snow and ice effects were practical on sets, achieved through artificial frost, glycerin spray, and crushed ice to mimic sub-zero texture. Exterior lighting simulated the low-angle sunlight typical of polar regions, giving an eerie cold glow. Performing Arts 3. Costume and prop design. Hazmat suits and lab gear. Designed for realism, modeled after actual CDC and military biohazard attire. Sleek white suits contrasted with the black and gray facility, visually isolating the scientists even further. The infected vectors. Makeup design used pallid skin tones, black veins, and reflective eyes. The black ooze infection effect was achieved with a mix of prosthetics and visual overlays, highlighting the biological horror element. Corporate and military wardrobes. The Ilaria Corporation's representatives wore minimalist, formal clothing to emphasize their cold detachment and power. Movie Camera 4. Cinematography and Lighting. Director of Photography, David Moxness, and later Dennis Lenore. Lighting. Fluorescent overheads gave a cold, antiseptic glow. Strategic use of green and blue gels in reflective surfaces created visual unease. As infection spreads, lighting shifts to lower key, shadow-filled scenes with warm emergency tones, representing chaos breaking the sterile order. Camera movement. Slow tracking shots through narrow hallways accentuated confinement. Handheld and close-up shots were used during infection sequences for immediacy and tension. Petri dish 5. Visual effects. VFX teams added microscopic infection sequences, viral spreads under skin, and environmental effects, snowstorms, airlock sealing. Digital overlays were used for holographic computer interfaces and containment field energy barriers. The subtle blending of practical effects with digital enhancements kept the show grounded and eerie rather than overtly futuristic. Musical Notes 6. Music and Sound Design. Composer, Reinhold Heil. The score alternated between ambient electronic tension and minimalist piano motifs, avoiding typical sci-fi bombast. Sound design emphasized environmental noise, ventilation hums, distant footsteps, muffled alarms, dripping condensation, to heighten isolation and dread. Brain 7. Production Concept and Design Philosophy. Ronald D. Moore's production team wanted Helix to feel like a scientific thriller trapped in a petri dish. The design intentionally blurred the line between clinical precision and organic corruption. As the infection spread, sets were deliberately repainted, dirted, and lit differently to reflect the breakdown of order, a visual metaphor for mutation. The visual contrast between the controlled science and the uncontrollable virus underpins the entire season's aesthetic. Puzzle Piece 8. Legacy of Season 1's Production Design. Helix Season 1 was praised for its visual realism and claustrophobic atmosphere, achieved on a television budget. The Arctic base design remains a standout for its modular structure and symbolic storytelling through architecture. It influenced later contained sci-fi thrillers such as Fortitude and Night Flyers in how they depicted scientific isolation and biohorror.
So this is my personal insights and interpretations of Helix, including my favorite moments and characters. So what can I say about the series, right? It is straight on nightmarish, right? Because especially when you get into the meat of the matter, right? And you get to see that there's this big cover up and all of that. And we'll be talking about that in a while. And the opening theme and the background music, it doesn't give you that chilling horror vibe, usual vibe where, it's like dun 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 dun, and you have to be wondering what's gonna happen because you're hearing that music. No, in this series, the music is just like a normal kind of music, or you just hear, one nice little vocals, someone sing something, coming down the stairs and down the dee-dee-doo. And then all of a sudden, you get a jump scare or you get something that's happening, right? Julia, she ends up wielding her immunity against the vector horde, right? So there's a lot to get into. So without further ado, I'll just get into this series, the season 1 episodes. Episode 1, Pilot. So as I mentioned, Julia Walker, right? Alan Farragut and his team of CDC scientists, they end up going to Arctic Biosystems, which is in the North Pole above the 83rd parallel, right? Basically, that means essentially the jurisdiction kind of iffy, right? And so Ilaria Corporation is conducting some very unsanctioned and weird experiments because Peter, Alan's scientist brother, has been infected by a deadly and unknown virus, right? And the virus, it basically gives you some black blood, right? And what happened is that it made them transform into these monstrous beasts, right? That, well, when they say transform, they don't transform physically, they kind of retain their form, but they do ooze the thing out of their mouth and all of these things. Yeah, it's that kind of episode. And they try to infect others around them, right? Using that method of mouth-to-mouth contact and stuff. So, you are afraid of somebody coughing in your face, but these vectors, they are different. They definitely gonna get you, right? They're gonna make you ingest whatever it is, you know? Anyways, when Dr. Farragut, that's Alan, and him team reach there, them want to get drip feed the information. So basically, then I tell them that's Hataki, right? Hiroshi Hataki, who's played by a very well-known actor, right? I loving him in lots of movies and TV shows. But in this one, he's he's like totally on the gray side. I would say the gray side. He's not totally in the black in terms of, being totally evil. But yeah, he has not been truthful or forthcoming or willing to share information with the team. And so that leaves them in a bind because be a hidden something are going, you know what I'm saying? And as the team goes on, and the rest of the season goes on, we will see that, right? Episode 2, Vector. So the virus is now being spread amongst the persons them at the base, like pan rapid, right? And people get overtaken, right? The infected, as I mentioned before, the vectors, they're behaving like intelligent predators, right? So they must seek out. It's not like by accident somebody sneeze or somebody cough in your face and you catch it. No, they must seek you out to infect you, right? Now, Dr. Atake, in secretive, as I mentioned before, and him might move very, very, scaly, in very, very suspicious right now, right? And that leads the CDC team right now for us to try figure out a treatment, right, for the infected patients. Because they don't know what they're going to deal with. They don't know how they're going to, they're going to create an antidote or anything like that, right? And figure out to contain the virus, right? So in the process now, the group become very anxiety driven and panic sets in, right? And so scientists against scientists, right? Instead of, being like what you would expect scientists to be, trying to work together to find a common solution or to work through the problem, to try at least understand it, so they can at least attempt to find some way through it. No, they are, them get very fearful, and you can understand they're human beings anyways, right? You're infected, and then or you are not sure that you're infected, and then you're being put into a group where there's somebody that's possibly infected, and you don't know whether or not you forgo or stay or what you for do, how you're going to approach it, right? Yeah. So the virus is spreading itself through the people them, right? As I mentioned, right? Episode 3, 274. So on day 3, Peter seek out Alan help, right? Before him collapse. Now, more people are fall infected, and the CDC identify a virus strain which is called Narvik B, because them figure out said that have something with him that work on, through prodding and pushing, Hitaki kind of give up that, yeah. We get to see even more Hitaki's secret experiments, and that it have some connection to some human evolution, right? Something for do that. Now, at the same time now, Julia, she start to experience some strange visions, right? After she has been exposed. So she get exposed, right? So Dr. Jordan should create what she believes is a rapid response test that will, identify infected patients, right? And then find out, say, through that test, said Julia, would have been infected because she was attacked by Peter in the shower, right? I mean, like, that was one of the jump scares. I think, that you weren't looking out for, okay? She was just taking her shower in the bathroom, but you was wondering why the camera really are zooming upon her, in other way, if you say, something not gonna happen, that kind of hint. So when Peter, come up at her that show, yeah, what that is he going to rape her, or is he there, trying to, you wonder what it was. But then now you see that it the way how it panned out, all him do is just probably just, kiss her, because that was all that was done. So while all of this are going on now, Major Baliceros, him help Dr. Doreen, right? And I say help in quotes because she find out, say, through a sample of macabre blood. So, yeah, something are going on there. So, episode 4, single strand. So, day 4, right? And the team develop a possible cure, right? Them testing on monkeys. Them finally capture Peter. Alan try for, reach him on an emotional level because them have him strapped down, right? Them have him strapped down because him a move very, very shady. Julia, first symptoms them start to worsen, which suggests that she got through some mutation, which is much, much different from what happens to persons who have been infected because, for them thing was just different, right? So the people them with them test positive for the virus, them quarantine them and abandon them basically in the base lower level, right? Them people they know them come up with a plan to force the hand of Dr. Ataki so that him have to basically help them get them out of their situation. So Dr. Ataki have to re-establish communication because them cut off the air supply to the base upper levels. At the same time now, Peter, film condition worsen, and I mean drastically, right? Which force Alan now to try an untested, virtually unique, universal virus treatment, right? Which involve him being cryogenically preserved. So they use some fluid for, because it would have been hinted at previously where we saw in the snow when Balaceras him go outside and go look. Cause him shady, the brother is shady, and we'll come back to him. So him go outside and him see a bunch of monkeys in the snow, right? And you can see that they are frozen still. So it's almost like they are running or them are trying to escape, and that's where they end up, you know, being frozen out there in the snow. So basically, they would have figured out that them could have used that to kind of, help Peter's condition. Now, Sarah, she comes up with the idea and a question about her rapid response test and whether it's truthful or not, whether it's veracity, you know. So when time I figure out, say, boy, basically it not really work out because of that. Now, Dr. Doreen, boy, Major Balaceros, as I mentioned before, they were working closely together, right? And Doreen should get to understand more about the virus, right? But should I get to report this to Alan, who is the head guy, right? So them not get to find out nothing else. Major Balaceros take her out. Yeah, that that was sad. I mean, she wasn't a bad character. You know what I'm saying? She was played well by the actress, and I think that you know they should have probably find a way to keep her around and thing. But like, yo, you know what I'm saying? The way them just make her get but someone had to die to keep the secret, right? In these series, that's how they usually do, right? You come close to the secret, so us, the audience, know the secret, but then, the persons them who depending on getting that information don't get it. Yeah, that is a sad. And Major Balacera shows up in colors even more because, him that move very shady, but yes, he said him willing to murder, right? He's willing to cause this because him have a agenda, him have a job to do actually, right? Yeah. Episode 5, The White Room. So Daniel, I haven't talked about Daniel yet. His attack is a, chief security personnel. He's also Hitaki's son, right? Because we get to see that, say, boy, Hitaki and him have that close bond. And it is that bond is almost like them going to death together. You know what I'm saying? They'll go to the ends for each other because Daniel is basically Itaki's son, right? And we'll get to find out even more about that scenario and what's really going on there. So him start to question Hitaki's motives, when him start to question Hitaki's motive, we as the audience have to wonder, what has Daniel now, seen, what has he has seen to be able to hold it for so long, and then at this point or this juncture, making that decision, if you question Ataki, it's almost like you never questioned me before, so why now? You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of vibe I get. Oh, Julia, fair infection mutate, as I tell you before, that something happening to her. She survives and is showing some strange resilience. Right? Strange stuff. Now, Itake, when him they get the communications open, the line between the basement and just to find out why them cut off the air and what him go down there. So he had a way to get down to the lower levels and that is why Daniel kind of feel away because like you left me out of that. I not even know about a secret way to get down to the lower levels other than using the regular channels, Yeah, so him have a secret staircase. So him have an office with a false wall basically and he can open the wall and go in this room basically and there's a staircase in there that takes him anywhere in his thing there, which I mean it's good planning if you're doing when you do escape routes, especially with the kind of situation that you have yourself in, especially when you handle these things. It's good, but to have it secret from the public, basically not having anybody know. Suppose something happened to him, then that place never get access. Nobody knows it exists. Yeah. So yeah, that's how he's able to get to Julia. Before him to get to Julia, him they actually get injured. Yeah. And they actually get injured. So Julia is end up after help him and stuff and whatever. Right? Yeah. So on day 5, I had mentioned that Balaceros, they killed Lorraine. So her body shows up dead. And the CCTV from the time shows very corrupted, which say Balaceros cover him tracks. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the type of man he is. You know what I'm saying? He must think ahead in terms of what is the next step? What would they expect to do? You know? So him cover him tracks. Now, Alan figure out what really happened to her, right? He might try to figure out to her. Now, Julia, who is on quarantine level R, she end up find a helpful friend, right? So while she there down there, she find a very helpful friend. And, we're gonna come back to that. Well, Sarah, in the meantime, she hides more than just an infected patient in a fair room. So she have an infected patient now. People are hide secret, right? And these are good guys, right? Now, Sarah, she also has some issues, right? So she hallucinate and stuff. It's almost similar to, so, in a way, at first I thought that she was infected and she was seeing that patient in the room and stuff, but I was wrong, right? It wasn't her that was hallucinating that badly, although she does hallucinate later on down, right? Now, at the same time, Balaceros him try to uncover the whereabouts of the missing Dr. Hevat. Because he had disconnected them, from that part that was very interesting. He had disconnected the base from the outside world, right? Because them have a satellite uplink and thing, so them can't contact nobody, right? That's why they go outside too, right? As I had mentioned before. So him get some information because him have a device that basically can connect to probably one satellite they have set up at Ilaria, right? And they ask him to retrieve Dr. Hivat, right? And so I try to figure out where is Dr. Hivat. Him go to one scientist who has been known to par with Dr. Hivat. I work with him basically. And the man tell him say, Dr. Hivat and thing, and whatever. And him say, well, Dr. Hivat, they in the white room. Man said, the white room? And he'd say, oh, I'm sorry, it's an inside joke. Like, how can you, anyways. So the joke is that they are in the white room. Everyone is in the white room currently because they're in the North Pole and the snow is what makes it white. You get the joke now? If you get the joke, just drop it in a comment. If you don't get the joke, too, drop it in a comment. Let me know. Okay? Because I didn't get the joke. Right? Still don't get the joke. But yeah, let me know whether or not you do. Episode 6. So this episode is like a blink and you miss it kind of thing that's happening. So Balaceros, he would have gone and looked for Dr. Havit out in the snow. And I think at that point, that is when Daniel would have come looking for him, right? Or find out at the same day and him go and, basically thinking take him out, right? But him never did, right? Dr. Jordan, our patient, take a overdose and thing, and she and Alan got at it, and got into it and thing. And as I mentioned before, or if I didn't, they are a thing, right? At least, we can see the tension between her and the fact that she see Julia around him and how him reacting when he's around Julia and Julia is him ex, you know? Yeah. This was at the point now where Hitaki would reveal about the cryogenic facilities, and this is where they would have taken Peter and put him in a that, right, for help him and stuff, right? Daniel also find out some shocking stuff about him origins, mainly that he's not Hitaki's son per se, right? Obviously, I know like blood relative, but it wasn't like him that I expect say it was anything, right? Well, what would have been expected. But anyways, I mentioned that Sergio, Major Ballesteros, would have survived his, apparent undoneness. He was taken by someone, right? And that woman, she turns out to be Daniel's sister. So she is blood sister. And it turned out say Daniel have a brother, a twin brother. Yeah. Right? So she the one know what Ballesteros can tell her about Arctic biosystem because she believes that they were taking children. She doesn't know why, right? But yeah, all of that was going on, right? And of course, Alan would have discovered what Doreen would have discovered before she died. So now I'm caught up, right? On what is going on. Episode 7, Survivor Zero. So Peter becomes the first Vector Alpha, showing intelligent control. Julia, her immunity is confirmed. She's infected but stabilized. The Ilaria Corporation, their involvement becomes very, very much more clearer. So Constance Sutton of the Ilaria Corporation, she arrived with her mercenaries, right? When she come, she tell Alan, say, me here, I'm just here to facilitate whatever you want. It's almost like that management speech that you give to people and, you tell them, say, no, man, you are run the show, you call the shots. I'm just here to serve you. So what do you want from me? But actually, she is very commanding and confident. So, say that are just the talk and not actually the work which she give, right? Because she go to Itaki privately and she take him to task because she say, me happy say you create the virus, as you were ordered to. But you have not yet created a cure. What do you do? You waste time. But Julia, she is on level R, right? And she continue to hallucinate and she have trouble dealing with her silver eyes because, yeah, she gets silver eyes, the same eyes that her father has, Dr. Itaki, right? So Dr. Itaki have the same eyes, same silver eyes, and him have to use contacts to cover it up. And yeah, there is more to come where that is concerned. Itake tell Julia say she not to touch or trust something, right? Because she out for kill her, right? Now Ananya and Belisaris them return to the lab, right? And she confront Daniel and she tell him, say, listen, I believe say you're my twin brother and you were abducted when you were a kid, we couldn't find you, you go missing and stuff and all of that. So now Daniel knows the full truth of his origins. Episode 8, Bloodline. So Atake him admits that Julia I'm daughter, right? Genetically modified, right? Alana struggle between science and immorality, right? Because he know what the science I say, but should he be doing, what he has to do, right? Yeah. Does the ends justify the means kind of thing? We'll be right back after these messages. Hey listeners, just a heads up, this episode touches on some violent topics. If that's not your thing or it's a sensitive subject for you, feel free to skip this one.
This is Code Flix Transmission 7. Origin unknown. Signal strength unstable. The podcast was never meant for profit. No sponsors, no ads, just a voice spreading. But once it started, it grew faster than we expected. If you're hearing this, you've been exposed. Share the file. Pass it on before containment protocol kick in. Leave a comment. It's the only way we'll know you're still human. Every listen keeps the signal alive. Every share accelerates the evolution. End log. Do not isolate. The connection is the cure.
Now, Ilaria, them send a team for retrieve Hitaki and Julia, as I mentioned before, right? Now, Julia, she returned now. She feeling healthy and she's very hungry. She'll play one practical joke on Alan and Sarah, right? Now, one Vector, him basically look like it's a plan, then layout, right? The Vector them plan up together now because, and him break into the food storage area and him contaminate the base food supply. Yeah, that didn't look pretty. Just watch the series, watch the episode, and tell me if it's not cringy, right? Now, Constance, now she tell Ataki that she learn about Julia, right? Because she got through Itaki's things and she figure out say him have an obsession or seems to have some reason to be watching Julia, right? Him have information in a special folder that is hidden away in a secret drawer, right? That he didn't tell anybody how to activate or how to access other than him, right? Not even Daniel know how to open it, right? And Daniel supposed to be right on. So, she was able to get into it anyways, right? So Julia, she had Julia, confined to quarters and thing, but Julia escaped, right, through the base ventilation ducts. And of course, the Ilaria security guards, them go after Julia, right? When Daniel make sure say Anania leave the base because he knows that things are gonna pop off, he know things are go down a certain way, him no want her there, right? Even if him not really accept the truth yet, right? But him can't deny, So as she leave the base, she find Balaceras in the coal a try to hotwire her snow vehicle, right? And him tell her on multiple occasions, say, don't trust me, never trust me, right? Even though, just a second ago, he was in custody of Ilaria and them that say them preparing to basically punish him because him not do him job or he fail at his mission, right? So he escaped, as you see him, it was just comical. Now Ananya, she realized say Balaceras has used her, right? And as we say, him tell her say she not trust him and thing. Now one Ilaria guard now him tell Constance say Balaceras help Ananya to escape the base, right? And so, Constance try to hold control and things. So she tries to get Daniel over on her side. She tell Daniel say, listen, Itaki, him lose him way, right? So me need you at my side and whatever. I need you for your work with me. And she, she give that kind of, as I said, she's like that manager that's giving the carrot and the stick in a same motion, the same verbalization, Now, Daniel, him, for the time being, just like a good worker, you assure your boss, assure Constance that, boy, me loyal, to Ilaria. That me loyal today, they Itaki no more, you see it. Now, Itaki confront Constance, right? And him take her out, taking back control of the base, right? And I thought that was quite a scene because him confront her in our quarters and basically, him use a razor wire that he had concealed because he wouldn't have gotten into the place there with a weapon, right? So they conceal a laser wire in the watch that apparently she had given him. So we see that these two have a relationship at some point, right? And perhaps it's no more, right? Not the way how either of them would have wished. Episode 9, Level X. So them find a hidden sub-level. Like, seriously, right? Of course. It is filled with failed experiments. Itake's human experiments have been exposed. Peter's evolution continues. And him lead infected vectors. Right? So the secrets them come to light, and there are some unlikely alliances that are established. And at the same time, Alan and Julia, them take on a very dangerous mission to destroy what's left of the Narvik viruses. Now, Julia, she learned something very, very world-shattering about her past. Yeah, that is quite interesting. There is also the fact that Miska, or Daniel, right? Daniel's real name is Miska. So he would have followed Anania and Balisarius to the Inuit village where he's from. And when him go there, them realize that there are Ilaria goons there, right? So Balisarius hatch up a plan to basically act like, him still at work with them. And, we still not trust him, but at this point, what else you gonna do, right? Mishka and him, them pretend to be, carrying out orders. So when they go meet up with the goons, them and thing where round up all of the citizens in the settlement to make it look good, Mishka thump him brother, name face, and tell him say, me and I Inuit something in tell him and thing. But yeah, then at the point where they're able to do it, when the guard let down, Balisarius take out one I guard them and then they take out the rest of them and thing, and they're able to free everybody and thing. So now the fact that they do this, them realize say, yo, Ilaria serious and thing, and they need to get back to the lab in order to make people know say things are going on. So Julia, she thought that when she was younger, when she was a child, she was going to Montana to go and stay with her parents, right? And to her, she has a vision of what Montana looks like. So when she looks and see the setup that Ataki has, she recognizes, say, hey, this is weird. How is it that this place here there? So, and I that kind of cements it for her, like, yo, something not right and thing. And of course, she would have, found out that Ataki, our father and thing. So, that make a lot of sense to her now. Episode 10, Fushigi. So Dr. Adrian, who would have been the one that would have helped Alan to put Peter into the cryogenic thingy, he would have been asking for quid pro quo. So if he did do that for him would have helped him to get out. Now, Dr. Adrian has given up on Alan because Alan apparently forget him basically as I feel. And so he absconded from the base with a sample of the deadly virus Narvik. Right? So now Alan and Julia them pursue him and them find him a one abandoned satellite station, right? And them get pinned down just as them about to get him to give over the virus or for stop him from thing there. They get pinned down by one lone gunman, one of the Ilaria man them with the left back, who basically pretend like say enough of them there, to try and keep thing there. But him lay down some barrage of shot upon them and thing, and him kill Dr. Adrian, of course. Dr. Adrian had made contact before the radio get disconnected. Of course, so, somebody have to shoot a radio in these things, right? To make sure the radio stop work, right? So the radio stop work and they can't contact outside for help now, right? So at the same time now, they them come across the truth about Ataki's plan and Julia's condition, right? And that would be that big secret that has been held across for how long, right? Now, Dr. Jordan herself, she make a startling discovery on her own, right? About cancer, right? Which she thought was gone, but the test, revealed said that it has far advanced. Yeah. So she about to die, and that's why she is going through hallucinations and thing, right? It's not that we thought that she was infected, yeah? So of course, Julia, she confronts Hitaki about him lies and her heritage, she try to understand, she try to make sense, like many of us would want to make sense about such a situation. Why would you do that? You know what I'm saying? Why you basically stalk someone like that? Now, Alan come up with a plan to destroy the base if containment fails. So, that is something serious, that they have to get into. Episode 11, Black Rain. So Hitaki unleashes what he calls quote-unquote black rain to sterilize the infected areas. However, the plan fails because the vector them adapt, right? I mentioned them move very intelligent like, right? And they're led by Peter, who is, his mind is being controlled by the virus, apparently, right? And things. So, yeah, with how we're going, it would have been a very sticky situation. Now, Ilaria's force is closing now, right? Peter and, as I mentioned, they would have spread the virus in a desperate attempt, right? At the same time, the scientists of the CDC them create a cure for the virus by working together. Finally, everybody work together, and this is where they're able to use virus to treat everyone who has been infected, right? No, that's not what happens. So them create the antivirus, and just as them try to get to safety, the ones that might get cured from the disease, them make them way out of the bunker. An Ilaria assassin, him come in and him take them out like, fell swoop. He's called a scythe, right? Because him have two scythes that him carry around, right? Which, after he takes off his helmet, you get to see, say, is one teenage boy. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, and he is also one of the silver-eyed ones, them, right? Yeah. So we know say some serious things are going on. I mean, the way how he came in, right? He got into the base was one of those things that, make you think about how they were planning ahead, yeah. Them realize the boy, they were gonna expect them to come by vehicle and stuff, and so them will look out for vehicles and things for come in. So the snow of vehicles them start to approach the base and them start bust off shot upon them and thing, for defend against that everybody, Peter, Hataki, everybody, because them and say, boy, you know, whoever come and go much worse than Constance. But then they use that as a misdirect and them end up infiltrating the base. Now, you remember I was mentioning that Alan would have had a plan to blow up the facility. Yeah, them make them way to the bunker and thing and a hunker down and ready for go blow up the rest of the facility and them click the remote. Yeah, and it doesn't go off. And for a while I was puzzled, right? Until I watched the rest of the episodes in the season, which is about 2 more. But anyways, so we'll talk about what really happened. So the teenage boy, right, is Constance's son. I have to mention that from here, right? So you add a context of what, and of course, he realizes that a mother was killed by Hataki. Episode 12, The Reaping. So Ilaria's team would have stormed the facility, right? That's Spencer Chiswick, the Scythe, right? Now Alan, I'm gonna try to find a way to protect the survivor them. Julia gets taken by Ilaria again, right? Itaki have to make a serious sacrifice. So, as I mentioned, the site is revealed to be the immortal Spencer Chiswick, who is Constance Sutton's son, right? And him look like a 16-year-old boy, right? Now, Alan and Itaki, them did smart, because we hear them they talk to one another and thing, and I realize that them they lure Spencer and him agents them outside in order to lay a trap for them, which they were successful to get them outside, lay the trap, but the trap only caught one of the agents them, right? So Itaki pretends him did have one of the canisters containing the virus and him threw the container onto the snow, hoping that Spencer would have jumped off that. But him operative, when I operative them attempt to retrieve the virus and them basically get wiped out, dropped through one chasm where they're underneath and gone basically. So of course, after Spencer doing like an investigation, him learned said Julia is Ataki's daughter, right? And he was watching the video over and over. So you can see that the man get very, very, him already deranged, but him get very, very much more deranged. I don't know how to explain it, but him get way more deranged now because he see how Ataki kill him mother in a cold blood. And, how that's how he would have found out about Julia because Ataki was protecting Julia. So him tell thing there say him them that try to launch a plan and thing and them end up in an elevator. Ataki, Alan, Julia, right? And the light went out and when the light came on back, Julia was nowhere to be found. Spencer got her. Now, after Spencer have her now, they must say, boy, I need to get her back because, Ray, and Tay. Only for Miska or Daniel to decide on him own, say he's going to confront Spencer. But him himself gets caught and was used as a bargaining chip. He's an hostage. And Spencer say, Itaki, me I go give you what you never give me, the choice to save a life. Right? And I say, you can't do this, you can't kill them. Say, no, and me I go kill them, you know. And you are go kill them, so you need to choose which one you want to live. You know, that moral conundrum, whether you take the left or the right, which one are you going to choose? How can you ask a parent, a father, to choose between his daughter or his son, whether the daughter and blood or not, right? Now, Miska or Daniel, he figures that Ataki would choose Julia because she's in blood. And so he gives nice little final line, basically, if say, me know say, at the end of the day, me and your blood, so me I go sacrifice myself. Yeah. Then they will have a contraption set to explode their head from body. That's all I can explain, right? Without being too graphic. And so, yeah, he died, right? To save Julia. So, of course, they're able to get in there and because Spencer by himself, right? And then basically have control of everything now. So then see that Spencer have one package, right? When other agents then reveal to them that what is in the package is actually Julia's mom, right? Who they thought was dead. Even Hitaki thinks that she did dead, right? Or no, he didn't think she was dead, but he told her she was dead because he wanted to spare her the agony of him have to tell her that the reason why him even agreed to create the virus in the first place for Ilaria, virus and cure actually, was to ensure that she kept on living. Even if the life that she had lived was not worth living still. But yeah, that's a sad, sad case. You don't want that to happen to anyone you love. Episode 13, Dans le Hombre. So this is the season finale, and we'll get a little flash forwards to the day 235, right? So on day 13, we see Balisarius agreeing to hand over the virus already reported to be in Puerto Rico, right? There was a list that Hitaki had of all of the displaced Inuit children, and that list is actually in his brain, right? Because him same now keep records, right? It basically they word it in such a way that at first you were like, there are no kids what you're talking about. We all know that you took kids from the Inuit village. So, about that, something that he was very cryptic. He have some cryptic way of saying things, and that is exactly why, it was so hard or so difficult. It's almost like threading, a needle to get information from him. Now, Peter, I cannot believe this revelation, hit like a sledgehammer, right? That how could he have done what he did from where I watched episode 1 come right up? This man I work for Ilaria all along as a Ilaria mole, and the fact is that he infected himself on purpose. No wonder Hitaki was wondering how him get infected, even though we never really trust Hitaki, we did really believe that Hitaki was that bad of a man, right? As I said, he resides in the gray. So he's not totally bad, but, him have some serious moral stuff, as people would say, why, judgment come for the worst of them. But anyways, him help Sight to escape, right? he is the one that would have set the Narvik strain to Puerto Rico. Now, Sarah learned, say, she pregnant. Can you believe that? No, Spencer, him kill Julia mother and him set up the bomb them for blow up the base. Now, luckily, Alan and them was outside and stuff, and he was only able to retake. We're not sure whether or not the virus him get or the cure, but he wasn't able to rescue Julia. Right? Although him try. Him actually go up in at the helicopter when it had lift off, and when he reach up in at the helicopter, Julia realizing say boy, them now go stop, and there's no way for her to, get away with Alan. She push him off, right? Now we flash forward, as I mentioned before, to day 235, where Alan, along with Peter, them search in Paris for Julia, right? And then we realize Julia is actually an Ilaria executive. You know what I'm saying? I was like shocked when they say them say that them a wait for one more member in their meeting, and when you look at Julia, right? And we did see that Alan marked a building, right? Basically, that building get exploded and stuff. So a whole heap of things that go on at the end of this season here, and join me for the next time that I do season 2. I might be looking out for the comments, just comment season 2 and let me know if you want me to do season 2 of this horrifying thriller. At the same time, very, very family centric. I went through many different levels. So we saw where the Narvik virus devastate the Arctic base, and this would have caused the CDC to come in, which it seemed like it was the plan, Now, the victims, them mutate into intelligent, infected beings trying to infect others, the vectors, them. Then we get to see that it's a shadowy biotech group that manipulate everything behind the scenes at Ilaria. And Hitaki's role as Julia's father and a very unethical way of doing experiments, right? And of course, him hide all of those secrets. We see the emotional roller coaster, the emotional weight to Alan and Julia. And then we see how containment get collapsed, which kind of set up season 2, right? That's the aftermath. And that's it for my analysis and interpretations. These are my theories about unresolved mysteries and some plot points. So, a question kept coming up, about what was Dr. Hitaki hiding, you know what I'm saying? As I went, through the episodes, and, it's hard to kind of summarize it in that way to say it was just down to that and whatever, because Hitaki seems to be secretive by nature, but the fact say, he went down this whole elaborate plan, and the way he built up the base and all of that, and who he lets in on information, looking at Daniel right there, it make you have to wonder about what his motives was. And that's why I said he resides in that gray area as a character, because he is partially good. He's doing some good, but at the same time he might do some wicked stuff, right? And they don't necessarily cancel out. So, in a way, him kind of balance out him thing, right? Another question is why Julia would have been remembering about the facility, you know, the whole idea of memory and, you know, how we understand it as human beings, you know, say it can be very, very untrustworthy, right? But the fact that she remembers, you know, just that part of a place, you know, as a child, you can understand, you know, as a child, you are just going to remember those wonderful stuff, you know, up to now, you know, there are a whole heap of things that I would remember as being good about my childhood, but you know, I remember the bad, you know, I remember the things that, you know, readily remember those things, you know, because sometimes they visit you in your dreams, you know, and all of those things. The brain is a weird place, you know. Yeah, it's a very, very weird place. It have a time, you know, random memories. You got things that you forget, and then, you know, things that you remember. You wonder why I remember this and not that, you know, why you couldn't choose to remember some of these things. Yeah, we don't choose our thoughts in that way, you know. Yeah. And then, you know, another question that comes up about this season was, you know, how, you know, what family would do for one another, especially because of how, you know, Itake, Daniel, you know, all of them made sacrifices, right, for what they believe is their family, right? Whether they sacrificed them life and career, whether they made sacrifices along the way in doing something, you know, they made all of those, you know, because they were doing it for their family, or, you know, in a way for themselves too, right? Now, of course, there are some major theories out there, you know, in the fanverse, right? Immortality and virus mutation. So the virus is designed to activate dormant genes, right? Which should grant a person immortality, but it have horrific side effects, right? Especially when Julia and Alan would have found that little boy, and I would say little boy was a big man basically now, but the way how, you know, he was chained up and stuff, you kind of understand, say, boy, you know, he has immortality, and at the same time, him totally changed, right? Horrific, and, you know, not suited to society and stuff. And so he was, you can almost say that he was kept as one of those black sheep aside, you know, put aside and stuff. And that the fact that he would have forced Julia to kill him, right? Or use Julia to kill him himself. Yeah. So at the end of the day, this scientific and philosophical implications that come up when it comes to forced evolution and manipulating genes, because, you know, as human beings, we have certain things about us that make us different from the rest of the animals in the animal kingdom. And if you're going to alter our evolution, or, you know, our genes in such a way as to cause things to happen, changes that will no longer make us human, right? And maybe that's why Hitaki did what he did, because he wasn't thinking anymore like a human being, because he's not, because him have the ability to outlast people. Yeah. And so his drive or his focus is not on what he can achieve or do for his lifetime to leave a legacy, but more of what can he do at this present time, what doesn't matter to him, because those persons are, practically like ants. They're easily smashed to pieces. They're easily, damaged. It's a messed up way of looking at things, but that is how he would be thinking, that's getting into the mind of that character. Yeah. Then you have several characters that grapple with their changing identities and fragmenting memories, which would be due to the infection. And this raises questions about whether the self would be able to persist even after the biological alteration, right? So it brings up the whole identity and memory, which is something that makes, us unique, each individual person, because we have identity, and our identity is shaped around our memories, our lived experiences. Yeah. Now, another thing is the true motivations of Ilaria. So Ilaria's goal seems to transcend simple profit or control, right? Which hints at a quest for human transcendence or survival in a post-human form, right? Because their whole thing is to release this virus, right? To make people either like them or take them out. Yeah. Basically forcing it on a population that me never asked for this, right? I wouldn't ask for something where gonna change me in such a way that I don't even know who I am anymore. Who am I? Hmm? And then there's the ambiguous role of Alan Farragut, because we get to see Alan's alignment and mental state wavering between hero and potentially compromised figure. And this creates a narrative tension regarding whether you can trust, and what his loyalty is like, and, sacrifice. Because earlier on in the series, Daniel would have shot and killed someone, and him go off on Daniel for doing it, even though it was a vector that was coming to do harm to another human being. And later on, we see where he held the gun and he shot and killed. So we can see that even though he wasn't physically infected, he was infected nonetheless with a different mentality in a situation, it kind of transformed him. And then finally, the vector control and exceptions. So there are certain cured persons that exhibit abilities and they are able to control infected vectors. Julia, of course, being one, right? Because when they came for her and Alan, when them da wander around, she was able to protect Alan from being pounced upon because she could have backed them off, And the mechanisms behind this selective immunity and control, them pretty much remain unexplained, Makes you have to think about whether it is there as something to kind of move the story along in certain ways, because you want the characters to be able to get there, but you want to also plausibly explain why it is that they would not be infected or be treated like, other persons. Then there are some plot challenges, right, on these things, right? The virus rapid mutation and selective curing strain believably, but it only seems like it serve a dramatic tension thing, right? The fact that it does mutate so fast and how it selects who and who going to be immortal versus who's going to become vectors, right? Then evolutionary changes them occur very swiftly, which not have any clear scientific rationale. So at times, the station's isolation and security protocols seem to be enforced inconsistently. We don't see that consistency. Julia's sudden transformation into an influential and possibly immortal figure we don't get much details, right? We only just recognize through, the way how them bring it across that, hey, she able to, protect herself against the vectors, right? They won't attack her or they won't try to turn her into anything, and she's immortal because, reasons. Share your favorite Helix moments or theories from season 1. Drop them in the comments. In this episode, we looked at Helix. Season 1, we looked at the outbreak, isolation, and the edge of humanity. This kind of show hit really differently, as I mentioned, because of the way how it came together, from the opening to the background music, it just seemed like something that I could persist, because horrors are not my forte, but as I said before, I will do it if you guys say, hey, do this particular horror, sci-fi, deep dive into it, But this one I selected because it was interesting when I was watching it. It had, some really good elements, right? The jump scares were on point. You don't feel like, oh, you got too much or too little. It was just enough to keep me going on, right? I know some person said that, it kind of slow building and, is only at the close to the end we started to see things kind of pay off, but that's what series does, right? These series are about slow building, getting you interested, wetting your beak, just keeping you just enough, giving you enough information, giving you enough to make you feel interested, right? And it's a good tactic, for fictional stuff, that gives you, thing there. But when it comes to real things, we don't want to be led on or led astray, right? So, with the amount of misinformation, disingenuousness that is out there, you want to be able to have something clear, concise, and to be able to get true information and correct information, right? And not a bunch of lies, right? We need that if we're going to survive this portion of history, right? So if historians take up this podcast, and I hope they do, right? It would help with the boosting the ratings. But anyways, it would set that precedence for us to know, say, hey, this is something that we need to learn from this time where things are so heavily edited. AI has a lot to play in it and how people are using AI, right? So it's not the AI itself doing these things, it's people using it and using it for sometimes nefarious reasons. So, again, I just wanted to just appeal that we try to just, vet our information that we get it, take everything with a grain of salt, as them say, because there's just so much out there that can lead us astray. And that's the wrap on this episode. We've crossed another milestone, and now the mission continues as we set our sights on 2,000 downloads. If you enjoyed the ride, be sure to follow, like, and share. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. This content is CAN credentialed, which means you can report instances of harassment, abuse, or other harm on their hotline at 617-249-4255 or on their website at creatoraccountabilitynetwork.org. Hey folks, just a quick heads up before you go, I'll be switching things up a bit. From now on, I'll be doing deep dives into TV shows season by season, spread across multiple podcast episodes instead of packing everything into one. This way you can really engage with each episode and I can avoid total mental exhaustion. LOL. Stay tuned for the new format.